In this video, we're going to look at some of the best crafting specializations on main crafters for making gold in the War Within. That means we're looking at the crafting professions that you're going to be pushing knowledge on and trying to be the best possible crafter on you can possibly be. This doesn't necessarily mean that you only have one main crafter. In fact, in some professions, it's massively beneficial to have multiple that you push hard on. But it means a character that you're willing to put a significant amount of effort into their professions to make them competitive. We are looking at getting enough knowledge points to craft at maximum rank in whatever quantities we want without having to use concentration. We are aiming to do the opposite of the alt army concentration builds. To craft most things at maximum rank in the War Within without using concentration, you need 100 profession skill, all bonuses from rare profession gear, and all plus skill from the knowledge tree that is available. Therefore, we will be assuming that you have 100 profession skill, all 3 bits of rare profession gear, and have been pushing knowledge as much as you can to be at the forefront on your server and region in this video. Before we look at some professions, what do we actually want from main crafter specs? Firstly, we want to be producing something that will make gold, of course. It's fine spending all that time and gold to set up main crafters, but we not only want to be making gold, but we want to be making as much as possible. Selling mass-produced rank 3 potions is going to make significantly more gold than selling rank 5 profession tools on a low population server. In this video, we are not looking at crafting order builds simply because they don't have the same potential to make gold as ones that sell stuff on the region-wide auction house. This doesn't mean it's not viable. In fact, it's an amazing way to make gold, but it's server dependent and requires a different skill set to make your sales. We are also not only looking for things that can sell for a lot of gold in the short term, but a lot of these setups to make long-term gold as well. Secondly, we want something that sucks to produce with concentration. We know crafters will be making everything with concentration well before we are able to produce it without it. Just because concentration crafters can craft them before us main crafters, it doesn't mean that they can make them well. Say for example, you had a potion craft that only crafted a single potion. Using concentration, you would only be able to make 1 or 2 potions a day, and that would really suck. On the other hand, using concentration to make big ticket items that we don't need to produce in massive quantities, maybe the advantage here could lie with the concentration builds. We need to take advantage of the fact that we can mass produce these things, give us an advantage over the concentration builds. Thirdly, ideally, we want materials to not be too insane, mostly because we want them to be reasonably cheap. We need to use all or close to all rank 3 materials to be able to mass produce our crafts. If these are several times more expensive than the lower rank materials, then we're going to have a bad time. The concentration builds can use rank 2 or even rank 1 materials in some cases. It's going to make this really weird situation whereby your competition can produce the same stuff with limited supply but lower rank materials and therefore likely cheaper. And that's not ideal market conditions for us, unless of course the concentration builds can actually deal with the whole supply of the market. We have no idea how the markets will turn out, but we know for example it's more likely that something like the new BIS Spellthread leg enchants for casters will have a significant difference in concentration and non-concentration crafting costs. This is because we need to use 8 rank 3 cooldown cloth to make these, which is a right pain in the ass to get hold of and make. Where say for example something has a crafting cost of just 10 ore, then it's much less likely to be a huge price difference between the rank 3 and the lower ranks. So therefore, when you have simpler, less complex materials, then there's likely to be less crafting cost difference between a concentration and a non-concentration crafter. Even better, we could craft things that have a lot of materials in them that have no quality value associated with them. This reduces the advantage that the concentration builds have, as there are less ranked materials going into these products. As a note here, throughout this video you may see that I'm slightly short on being able to produce the items I'm talking about. This is because Blizzard made it near impossible to get all the rare profession gear on the beta, but you can clearly see on each of them that if I add the last few bits of rare profession gear that I could craft these items without concentration. You get a total of 40 profession skill from rare equipment, so if you're seeing me with an uncommon profession tools in this video, I would have 22 higher skill on live when I do get those final bits of rare gear. So first up then we have Blacksmiths and the Stoner build. This is a build that I mentioned in my top 32 best profession spec builds. Please check out that video after this one if you haven't already. This build is producing weapon enchant stones or the other ones that go on gathering profession tools to buff finesse. We put 30 points into means of production, 30 points into stonework, 20 points into weapon stones, and if you want to do the crafting stones as well, 20 points into tool enhancement. At this point we can produce all the stones without concentration. All the various stones have identical materials to make them, and two of them, crystalline powder and nullstone, have no rank, which means that both the concentration build and us are paying the same price for those materials, whatever method we are using to make them. The core alloy is the only material that does have rank, and this itself only needs 10 ore to craft it. Basically then we have to use 10 rank 3 ore to make our rank 3 core alloy. The concentration build can get away with using perhaps rank 2 ore, so the only difference between our crafting costs is a difference in the price of 10 rank 3 ore versus 10 rank 2 ore. That price difference could be huge, but it could also be hardly anything. Either way, it's definitely much less than, for example, the spell thread we just looked at. In all of these builds, you also have to remember that we are running rare profession gear, which the concentration based crafters shouldn't be if they have any sense. Therefore you're going to have more secondary stats. This is going to help to close the gap between our crafting costs. In the 32 best crafting specs videos I talked about how I thought this wasn't an ideal concentration build, and that's simply because every craft of these only produces a single weapon or crafting stone. That is not ideal at all from a concentration build perspective. Us being able to mass produce in this situation is a huge advantage. Blizzard have also introduced buffs in some of the professions. Now these cost a little bit to use, but they really help cut crafting costs down. For blacksmithing, this is the ever burning forge, and this will massively buff our secondary stats. We can put 40 points into ever burning forge, 20 points into gracious forging, 20 points into discerning discipline. We craft an ever burning ignition and then we use it to get our huge stat buff for 30 minutes. Now I don't think the stoner blacksmithing build is the key to making tens of millions of gold, but I do think it's a perfect example of the sort of thing you should be looking at targeting. We have something that's awkward for concentration builds to produce because of the low amount of product they get per use of concentration. We also likely have hardly any difference in the material costs between producing the two items. We also have big profession buffs that we can help from mass producing these, which the concentration builds won't be taking advantage of. Okay, let's move on to some potions. Like with the weapon stones, this is something else that's a bit awkward to make with concentration, as you're not really getting a big ticket item to sell, just 5 potions every time you use your concentration. We start in potent potions and put 30 points into potent potions. We go over to alchemy mastery, max this out. The next part depends on which potions it is you want to make. You have notes here for all the 5 different herbs in the wall within. You need to max out all the ones that are in a recipe that you want to make. For example, for this potion of unwavering focus, I need Mycobloom, Orgbenid and Arathos Spear. So you can see I maxed out all the trees that are associated with those individual herbs. Now at this point I can make the potion of unwavering focus using all rank 3 materials without concentration. Any other potion that uses the same herbs I will be able to craft at max rank 2. If another potion has other herbs in it, then I'll need to max out that tree too before I can craft it at max rank. However, Before we max out any other potions, I would strongly suggest maxing out bulk production first. So bulk production reads, whenever you craft potions, gain potion spillover, which grants plus 18 multicraft for subsequent potion crafts within 5 minutes, up to 5 stacks. This gives us a little bit of multicraft, but it's mostly improving the buff that we get as we're continuously crafting. Once this tree is maxed out, we get a huge buff to multicraft, which is really going to help when we are mass producing potions. This really helps us get our crafting costs down versus the concentration builds that won't get such good use of this as we will. That is, if they even put the points into this. There is going to be massive demand for potions. There is no way that concentration builds are going to be able to supply the entire region-wide market. The only issue with this build is that you know 1,000 other people in your region will be running it, and cancel scanning could well be a nightmare. If you want to run flasks, the situation is almost exactly the same. 30 points into fantastic flasks, then max out the alchemy mastery that's relevant to the flasks you want to craft. Then we go back into fantastic flasks and max out bulk production. It's a huge amount of knowledge points needed to do either of these in alchemy, so it may well be worth sitting on your knowledge to see how the markets play out before committing to make a choice. You can't really go wrong with alchemy as a main crafting profession. At the start of Dragonflight, I went insane with enchanting, something like 16 world first rank 3 recipes and making over 80 million gold from it. That is not going to happen this time. Let's get into why. The ability to craft and enchant at max rank without concentration, running a 30-20-20 spec. 7 different potential specs here depending on what type of enchant you want to produce, from weapons, rings, chest enchants, etc. Just max out the node relevant to what you want to craft and work backwards and max everything out. Enchanting is a great profession, but I would never tell anyone not to take it, but I want you to be informed into what you're getting yourself into this time around. The weapon, ring and chest enchants all use epic crystals in the War Within. Now remember, we need to be using all rank 3 materials here to mass produce our enchants. The dust and shards should be fine. Getting epic crystals will be hard. Getting them at rank 3, I have a feeling this is going to be really challenging. It's really easy to say you're going to go for the big weapon enchants as these sell for crazy prices, but is your plan just to buy the epic crystals from the auction house, or do you have another idea? Or on the other side, the concentration builds are going to flood to weapon enchants as they are huge ticket items and they can actually produce these using rank 1 crystals. The really big enchants that sell for lots of gold are prime targets for concentration builds. They're making a lot of gold for every use of concentration, with secondary stats barely having any effect in enchanting because you have no multicraft. Can you really compete against those crafting costs, or is it easier to mass produce something a little bit simpler? We can get a little bit of an advantage over the concentration builds in that we can use supplementary shattering, put 30 points here, then 30 points into resource residue, ignore the 20 points on the right. This just allows us to shatter essence and get big secondary stat bonuses. This helps even the playing field maybe a little bit, but without multicraft affecting the crafting costs, it doesn't have the same sort of effect as the other profession buffs in helping bringing down crafting costs down close to what the levels that the concentration builds are working at. Adding material ranks to the enchanting crafting materials has made a huge difference from what we are used to in Dragonflight. Perhaps it's easier to target enchants that only use dust and shards, or maybe that are hard to get hold of so that concentration alt builds don't have them. Either way, there's going to be a lot of competition here, but it's also one of the biggest money makers around as well. Just think about all of this before you decide. There's absolutely no harm on sitting on your knowledge points and seeing how markets develop before committing. Leatherworking is interesting to be running as a main crafter spec in the War Within. In my other videos, I have repeatedly commented on the low difficulty of the leatherworking recipes. Well, we're going to have a look at how this really affects things when it comes to mass producing rank 3 leatherworking stuff. Let me show you this 95 point leatherworking build. It's going to have 30 points into flawless fortes, 30 points into spotless stitching. We switch over to learned leatherworking. We have 5 points in learned leatherworking and only 5 points for now, and 30 points into industrious innovations. Once all that is done, we can craft rank 3 materials, but then if we like, we can finish the learned leather tree and complete the waste not tree, but these are just minor bonuses to our secondary stats. As you can see here, we can produce our rank 3 materials as expected using rank 3 materials when we have all the plus skill from the knowledge tree. Like I said earlier, I only have uncommon profession gear. This means I'm actually missing 22 skill here. This gives you a lot of leeway with leatherworking. You're in a position where you don't have to commit to buying the rare profession gear and you're still able to produce rank 3 regions. Of course, those that do buy the rare profession gear will have more secondary stats. You could potentially run this spec on its own, but if it was me and I put the effort into getting to this point, I would be setting up a main crafter to use those rank 3 regions to mass craft rank 3 finished products to sell on the auction house. This build gives us 408 skill versus 400 recipe difficulty to produce the 2 main armour kits, the Defender's Armour Kit and the Stormbound Armour Kit. Now that's great. We can also mass produce these with just uncommon profession tools, but if we do upgrade them to rare, then it allows us to craft them only using 1 crystal fused hide at rank 2 and 1 at rank 3. That is a really nice bonus to cut down your crafting costs significantly. Overall, the generally low difficulty on leatherworking recipes gives you a bit more wiggle room, especially if you're not someone who's not really going to be pushing as hard as the super tryhards like me. Jewelcrafting I really like as a potential main crafting spec, mostly because once again it's another one where we can set up multiple high quality crafters on a production line to produce rank 3 gems. In gem cutting, max out gem cutting for 50 points. Then it all depends on what gem we want to be able to cut at rank 3 without concentration. In this case we've gone for the Deadly Emerald, so we put 30 points into Emerald and then 20 points into Deadly Emerald. This 100 point investment allows us to produce Deadly Emeralds without concentration when we get our rare profession gear. This costs a lot of knowledge initially, but subsequent gems are a lot cheaper once that 50 point gem cutting tree is filled. Of course you could go super hardcore and make 4 gem cutters, 1 for each gem colour, and have them all maxed out pretty quickly, but yeah, good luck with that. The first thing to notice here is that gem cuts need a frigging insane amount of materials for what they are. 6 gems, 20 crushed gems, and 1 engraved gem cutter. Luckily, from the perspective of someone who wants to mass produce these, gems themselves at least have no rank. Our second main crafter needs to be our prospector and gem crusher who can make all of our engraved gem cutters eventually. I would start by putting 10 points into shaping and 40 points into gem finding. With this 50 points spent, we can crush gems with rank 3 ore and mass produce rank 3 crushed gems for our cuts. So at this point, like I said, we have 50 knowledge spent and can produce rank 3 crushed gems and have a lot of bonuses to our prospecting from the gem finding tree. We will put the next 20 knowledge points into whatever colour gem we are concentrating on cutting, so in this case the emerald tree, to further buff the chance of getting green gems from prospecting. Make sure you read the bonuses on whichever trees you max out, as there is some stuff here that only affects when prospecting certain ore, so just make sure you know what the bonuses do that you are getting. Now if you wanted to be totally self-sufficient on crafting rank 3 gems, then you could go back up to shaping and put the remaining 20 points here before putting 15 points in the masonry tree. This allows us to make rank 3 engraved gem cutters. The other rank 3 regions we need to craft all of our rank 3 gems. However, I think this is a big mistake. I think you are much better off spending your next 60 knowledge to max out all the gem colours to make you get loads of gems of every colour and make your prospecting as valuable as possible. Firstly, When crafting a gem of a certain colour, we don't just use that gem. In the example earlier with the Deadly Emerald, I actually used 2 red gems in addition to the green gems. And this is the case for all the cut gem crafts. So yes, we need gems of all colours, whatever it is we actually want to cut. Secondly, even if that wasn't the case, I can guarantee you that we'll get much more value by spending our knowledge on improving our prospecting and selling any extra gems than buying the engraved gem cutters from the auction house. Now once you have all 4 of the gem trees filled out and your prospecting maxed, then you can go back and fill out shaping and masonry so you can make the engraved gem cutter rank 3 and finally be completely self-sufficient in crafting gems. Jewelcrafting is really strong, but it is definitely not a starter profession. You really need to know what you're doing here because you're taking raw materials, prospecting, crushing and producing rank 3 gems that can easily be produced with concentration. It's so easy to make mistakes at so many different stages, but if you're an organised crafter who is confident in the things like prospecting rates, then this could be a huge earner for you. Although you'll probably need to spend the rest of your expansion looking at a spreadsheet, working it all out. You need to take advantage of the fact that you own and control your entire production process, and then you can do really well from this. So that was some of the top crafter specs, but it was far from all of them. I wanted to make a video covering some of them, but mostly talking about the extra factors that we have going into War Within that may dramatically affect what is a good choice for a main crafter spec. We don't have anyone mass producing world first crafts anymore, as everyone could make them with concentration and cheap materials on day 1 of the expansion. What works well to craft with rank 3 materials and what works better with concentration. Hopefully, even if I didn't speak about a spec or profession you want me to cover, I did talk about a few things that you may find useful when thinking about how to approach the professions you really want to put the effort into this expansion. Thanks for watching guys, see you next time.